Okay, Georgia. So hopefully in video 3 tonight, March 1st, 2019, I'll actually get the feedback done. Okay, so the reason I say clarify in this is because I do think when you're talking about who your sample is, remember how in the previous video I'd said I'm a little concerned about you including past or certain disenrolled computer science students. I think that if the students in your sample disenroll, so your sample from a specific single class during the time frame, if they disenroll, if they agree to be in the study and they disenroll, I think you should chase them down to the extent possible. But I do not think you should go for students that are out of this time frame from a past time because they honestly, I don't think can remember their insights well enough, and there's research to back that kind of thing up. That becomes a different form of research. That becomes historical, sort of narrative research, and that's not what you're doing exactly. You're not really going off on what people did last semester, and now they're in a completely different phase of their life because, for a teenager, 6 months later is like kind of years later for an adult in a way. But so I think that it needs to be students from your sample. All right, so that's why here I say clarify. Make a decision about how you're going to handle that. Really, yeah, I've said what I think. So clarify it. Anywhere you talk about enrolled in, disenrolled, or previous takers, do clarify that. Obviously, you have a few extra spaces here. Here's another currently enrolled, disenrolled, or have taken situation. I think you can get rid of that sentence, obviously. If you disagree, that's fine, but I think you can get rid of it because it also builds on this issue that I think that you need to resolve. So you probably just want to get rid of that sentence. Here you talk about how you want to have 15 students. So going back to that bounded system, just think about it. What would be your target number of students? Here you would have, like if you went with this multiple case study where you built a case for several different girls, that might be 5 different students. Here in this single case version, you could have, if there are 15 students in a class, then you could analyze 15 girls' data as a single case. So it's like the girls in an introductory CS course, and it could be 8 girls, it could be 12 girls, it could be 15. So that's helpful information, but that kind of hints to me what kind of boundedness you're looking at. You're probably, anyway, it ties into that. So be sure as you update how your bounded system looks that you update this as well. Okay, context. And you'll recall if you scroll up to the top that I recommend that you do context first, then sampling, then recruitment. So change the order. It just makes more sense. It's like bigger picture, then sampling, that's research decisions about whom you're, what kind of people what kind of participants you're picking. And then recruitment gets even more detailed. So it's like up, down, down. You're narrowing, funneling down. Yeah. So yeah, this here where you're explaining your context and how you're going to study a single computer science classroom, that's how it makes including past students inappropriate because they're not part of this bounded system, so it's not appropriate to include them. Here you mention your timeline a little bit, but you don't say when it begins. So make sure it's okay. And I think you mentioned timeline in another spot. You may be more specific, but anyway, go ahead and tell us here, since you're mentioning timeline here, tell us when it starts. Okay, proposed data collection procedures, good stuff. Again, I think I mentioned this vehemently earlier. I strongly recommend no video. Don't you think that teenagers are going to be completely self-absorbed / self-conscious if you're videotaping them while you're trying to like have a rapport and talk about computer science? They're not going to be paying attention to, they're going to be like checking their look in their selfie screen of their camera and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I wouldn't do it. And I also, like I said, think IRB would become even harder for you to pass. Okay. Here's another case where, based on what you do to update this currently enrolled, disenrolled, past student thing, you need to sort of update it here as well. Okay. Yeah, I just do some edits here. Okay, what are we looking at here? Okay, so this was kind of a wompy paragraph where I was trying to move things around. So I kind of did some like numbering. Okay, so you see a 1 here, a 2 here, a 3 here, and a 4. And I think it's kind of clear, but just in case. So I think this is the first sentence. And then I think the second section should be, so this is about observations, should be this chunk. So that goes next. Then insert the being statement, third, and then end with this researcher stuff. Because the way you start this paragraph, you say, I'm going to use observation, and it's a really bad kind of, it makes it almost sound like you're being negative about it, like it's a bad method of data collection, the way you just go into the second sentence about how it's biased and unreliable. That's not really what that's not really the impression I get from Merriam about observation. She loves observation. She does caution against the ways that it could become biased, but that's not the main point you want to make in your second sentence of this section. So if you want to include that information, that's great. Just put it at the end after you've kind of explained what observation is and, why and how and all that kind of stuff. So I think that reordering of that paragraph will help. So in this section, I think that these are proposed data collection procedures. These are sources of data. An interview is a source of data. So you might want to be even more specific and say sources of data, and then put interviews under that, and then put observations under that, under sources of data. And then this is not parallel. This, I think that this audio video recording stuff, that you can mention this, the audio, I think you should say you're going to do audio recording of interviews and mention that up in the interview section. Okay? And I don't think you should audio video record the observations at all. So just mention this in the section where you're going to be using this technology, and maybe why. And the reason is because it's almost the types of information you need to capture in an interview are so detailed that it's very hard to keep up and take notes while also running the interview, asking the questions. And that's the rationale. That's the main rationale for using audio recording in an interview, is that it allows you to relax and actually run that interview effectively and conversationally. If you're having to write every word down or everything down, it's awkward. You're kind of sweating and nervous, and it just doesn't work as well. So that's why you have that recording as a backup. But it's still really good to take notes while you do an interview, because recordings also fail. I've had so many fail. So that's an example of where you then go and you write down everything you can think of from that interview. You memo those notes right afterwards. Okay, but that's beyond what you really need to say here. I do think that after this observation section, you need another source of data section on documents. Add that here and explain at least, what kind of documents that you'd be collecting, what you anticipate. So things that the teacher generates, things that the school generates, and maybe the district. Maybe you can go visit the office on computer science education. Ask the people that are running, because I think you work for them maybe. Get their information on computer science education in the district, because that's important documentation for your study that gives you contextual information about this innovation in the New York City schools. So there's got to be some documents on that. And there are definitely reports. And I think I've got several research studies that have come out of people working in New York City schools that I can dig up that I've seen people present on at SIGSI. So I think you could also use those kind of research reports that have been done in New York City schools. Those are documents that you could use as well. So we can do a little digging, and remind me if you want me to go I can find at least one, because I went to a presentation on so many different New York City school people, like researchers were presenting at a conference that I was at last year. Okay, so add a section on documents. Proposed instrumentation. So this section, like I said previously, is all about your interview. So I put this in the interview section, and if possible, make it more succinct, but it's actually pretty succinct. It's only a paragraph, less than about half a page. Okay, so role of the researchers has just a few formatting issues. I thought that was, a fine section. I won't mess with it for today. I think it looks good. Okay, vid. So what are we talking about here? Summary methods used to build case description. I think you did a good job sort of interpreting whatever I had instructed you to do previously. So hold off on this. Don't worry about this section for now, because we don't know. It's too early for you to write this section, at least at the moment, because you don't know how many cases you're going to have till you go figure out this bounded system question, okay? Once you figure that out, and hopefully you'll figure that out soon, then we can talk about how you build your one or your more than one case and how you analyze them. And this is also related, this section is also related to that as well. So don't worry about this section for now, this summary of methods used to build case description. That's more appropriate for a single case study, the intention of that section. Okay, so summary of analytic processes for conducting thematic analysis. Okay, so as I read this, I kind of thought it sounded like you know what you're talking about, but then sometimes I feel like maybe you don't. And so I recommend that you keep reading about it, and that you look at the examples that I've provided. Let me see how much time I have. Okay. I am going to go and show you in my folder system. And I provide links in the email that you're getting. So if we go here, I provided you a link to this folder of case study examples. You don't have to read all of these, obviously, but just kind of look at them. Maybe read their abstracts and then go look at their methodology, and they're going to I'll call it something different, but go look at their method section. So read their abstract just to kind of get an idea of what their study's about, and then scroll down and look at in this case they call it method. So just kind of read through it and look how they present their information and how they talk about their data collection and how they, the different kinds of data collection. Like they had monthly conversations and informational interviews and focus groups. So they had 3 forms of data, it looks like, and then how they analyze it. That's what I want you to just kind of look at. And luckily, research studies are really pretty short. So if you just go look at a few of them, you'll also see a variety of examples of different ways that they bound the systems that they're looking at. So that's kind of fun to see that. You'll see examples of multiple case studies where they have cross-case analysis. So go read those examples and read the Miles Huberman chapter 4 that I scanned for you. And then I want you to reread this section and see if you can explain it a little bit better. And I also, if you say there's 6 steps, then be very clear what they are. Use numbers if you can, or bullets within APA format. Go check that if you, as needed. But help us to make this a little more scannable, readable, because something like this is very complicated, or it's both complicated and complex. And it just helps us if you make it very easy for us to follow. But the fact that it's not totally easy to follow, that's what makes me think maybe you need to think about it more, read about it more. I don't think your software section I think your software section should be a paragraph or 2 where you're just kind of talking about the use of CACDAS software. That's what this is. Qualitative data analysis software. I'm not saying the acronym right, but it's CACDAS. Computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software, CACDAS. So you should talk about that, but then embedded in this section on software is you're continuing to talk about thematic analysis. So I found that a little bit strange. I think that the two should be separate. But anyway, right now just kind of work on it in these ways. I've suggested you look at a few case studies, read this chapter on analysis, and then come back and see if you can clarify this section. And that's really mostly all I have to say. I don't think the non-response error section is necessary. I just don't think that it's something that we're concerned with in qualitative data analysis. If somebody's not there that day and you're doing observation, you're not worried about it. You're just looking at what you see and you're taking notes about it. And that's okay. And you don't have to track that super carefully or worry about it. I made a few comments on the interview questions. I keep looking at them, and yeah, we can keep talking about that. All right, that's enough. Have a good night.